Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from? And what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. Shards of madness. I wake up in a world without color. Not in a poetic, everything feels dull and lifeless way, but in a literal, someone put a grayscale filter on existence kind of way. The sky is an oppressive gray. The buildings are duller than my grandmother's drapes. And my hands? My hands look like they've been printed straight out of a noir film. I take a deep breath and immediately regret it. The air is thick, like it's holding secrets, and not the fun, surprise party kind. More like the call is coming from inside the house kind. And then I see it. A tiny, shimmering, colorless shard. It glints despite the absence of light, like a piece of a mirror that's had all its shine sucked out. I kneel and pick it up. It hums against my skin, and that's when I hear his voice. You keep collecting those, and you'll end up knowing things you don't want to know. I look up, and there he is, the man who seems too perfect for this place. Not in a knight in shining armor way, but in a, this man is dangerous, and I'm going to make the worst decisions of my life because of him way. His sharp jaw looks like it was carved from sin itself. His eyes are black holes, pulling me in, promising destruction. You have 3 seconds to explain before I assume you're a hallucination and start licking street lamps, I say, slipping the shard into my pocket. He smirks. And here I thought you'd ask my name first. Oh, I don't care about your name, sunshine. I care about why you look like you belong in a Victorian ghost story, and why I keep finding pieces of a broken, invisible mirror. His smirk widens, because you're not supposed to be here, and those pieces, they're your way out. Now, here's where a normal person might start asking important questions, like, what do you mean I'm not supposed to be here? Or, how do I get out? I, however, have never been normal. Instead, I say, I'm getting serious, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss energy from you, and I have no choice but to be into it. His eyes darken, and not in a human way. More in a, the abyss is staring back, and it is amused way. That's going to be a problem, he murmurs, stepping closer. Because you have a choice, little troublemaker. You can find all the pieces, wake up in your world, and go back to your safe, color-filled life. He reaches out, fingers grazing my jaw in a touch so fleeting it might be imagined. Or, he continues, voice turning to velvet-wrapped poison. You can stay here, with me, in this world of madness, where the rules don't matter, and the only thing keeping you from losing your mind entirely. He grips my chin now, tilting my face up to his. It's me. Oh, that is so unfair. You're giving me an existential crisis and a raging lady boner at the same time, I whisper. He chuckles, low and dark, and it sounds like damnation. Choose wisely, little one, because once you pick a side, there's no going back. And as I feel another shard calling to me from the distance, I wonder, do I want to wake up, or do I want to fall deeper? I don't make a decision right away. That would be responsible, that would be sane, and I am neither of those things. Instead, I do what any self-respecting lunatic would do. I ignore him and start collecting more shards. The second piece is wedged into the eye socket of a grinning skeleton slumped against a wall. Nice touch. If this world is trying to scare me, it's going to have to try harder. I yank it free and wipe the non-existent blood on my pants. Building a puzzle or just hoarding sharp objects? He asks, leaning casually against a lamppost that's flickering like it can't decide if it wants to be on or off. Wouldn't you like to know? I shoot back, flipping the shard between my fingers like a coin. So, are you here to help? Or are you just my personal harbinger of doom? He laughs. and it's the kind of sound that makes my spine feel like it's being played like a violin. Why choose? I can be both. I hate that I like the way he looks at me, like he's already won some game I didn't even know I was playing. The third piece is harder to find. It's in the hands of a little girl, or what used to be a little girl. Her eyes are hollow, her smile too wide, and she giggles as she clutches the shard to her chest. "You can have it," she says sweetly, "but you have to trade me." Great. A demon child with an attitude. Trade you what? Her smile stretches wider. A kiss. I stare at her. "You have no lips." She cackles. "Then make it count." I consider my options. Kiss the horrifying child and get the shard. Stab Victorian ghost man for answers. Burn everything down and see what happens. Decisions. Decisions. "You really shouldn't kiss strange girls in strange places," he murmurs from behind me. "You don't know where they've been." "You sound jealous," I say, just to be annoying. "I sound entertained," he corrects, watching with dark amusement. "But go on, make your trade." I sigh and blow the creepy kid a kiss. She giggles, tosses me the shard, and vanishes into smoke. "That was disappointing," I mutter, pocketing the piece. "I thought she'd at least try to eat my soul." "She was too scared of what she might find," he says cryptically, walking ahead. "Come on, little troublemaker. The game's not over yet." Oh, I am so screwed. By the time I find the fourth shard, the world is starting to unravel. Buildings stretch like they're made of melting wax. The ground bends in ways that defy physics, curving upward into spirals that lead nowhere. And the shadows? They're moving when they shouldn't be. I'm starting to wonder if I should be concerned, or if I should be thrilled. "Tell me something," I say, twirling the latest shard between my fingers as we navigate a street that flickers between existence and nothingness. "What happens if I collect all of these and decide not to wake up?" He stops walking, turns to me, studies me like I'm something sharp and dangerous, which is fair, considering I now have 4 shards of unknown, reality-breaking power in my possession. "You stay," he says simply. "Yeah, got that much. But does this place stay the same, or do things change?" His smirk is slow, wicked. "Oh, little one, this world is shaped by you. If you stay, it will become whatever you desire." That's an unsettling thought, and a tempting one. I glance at the next shard, glinting in the distance like a promise. The real question is, what do I desire? And just how much madness am I willing to embrace? The 5th shard is waiting for me in the mouth of a headless man. Lovely. Gotta say, the interior decorating here is just chef's kiss, I mutter, crouching down. The body is slumped against a cracked stone wall, its hands still curled like they died trying to hold on to something. "You should be flattered," my shadow of a companion says, watching me with his usual smirk. "The world is just trying to impress you." "Yeah, well, I'd prefer chocolates and a heartfelt poem over corpse art, but here we are." I reach into the gaping neck hole and retrieve the shard. It comes out slick with something that better not be blood. "5 down," I say, wiping it on my sleeve. "How many more before I get my grand prize?" He tilts his head, considering. "That depends. Are you still convinced you want to see what's on the other side?" I glance at the fragments I've collected so far. They fit together, just barely. A puzzle without a picture. A mirror with no reflection. "What do you think I should do?" I ask, half joking, half serious. His gaze darkens, amusement fading. "I think you should stop." It's the first time he's sounded almost concerned, which naturally makes me want to do the exact opposite. "Oh, sunshine," I murmur, stepping closer. "Are you worried about me?" His fingers brush my wrist, a touch so light I could pretend it didn't happen. "I just don't think you're going to like what happens next." "Yeah, well," I say, tightening my grip on the shards. I've never been a fan of liking things anyway. The world shudders, the air shifts, and the next piece of the puzzle reveals itself. A door, standing alone in the middle of the cracked, shifting street. Waiting. A door. Just standing there like it's a casual Tuesday, with no regard for the fact that the whole world around it is currently having an existential meltdown. I can feel the pulse of the shards in my pocket, all 5 of them now, thrumming like a heartbeat of something alive. Maybe it's the power of the mirror pieces. Maybe it's just me starting to lose my grip on reality. But I'm getting this sense of something important behind that door. I look at the man beside me, his eyes narrowed, lips tight, like he's calculating the odds of me doing something monumentally stupid. You know what this is, right? I ask, though I already know the answer. He doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he watches the door, a muscle in his jaw ticking, as if he's already running through all the ways this could go wrong. Let me guess, I say, my voice low and teasing. The door is a metaphor for choices, right? Like the whole choose your fate kind of deal. He doesn't smile. In fact, he looks downright serious now, which is rare and, frankly, off-putting. This isn't a choice, little one, he finally says, his voice like gravel sliding down a cliff. You don't want to open that door. Why? I ask, barely hiding my curiosity. Is it gonna reveal your terrible past? An ex-girlfriend who lives in the shadows? Or maybe it's full of your childhood traumas, with a side of doom. Come on, I need more than don't do it. Give me the juicy details. He steps closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming, the air thick with something dangerous. This world, he murmurs, his gaze turning to the door as if it's calling to him too, is already fragile. You break it, and there's no fixing it. Not for you, not for anyone. I snort. Oh, so I'm the one who'll break it. You've been handing me shards of whatever the hell this reality is, and now I'm the bad guy. He doesn't flinch, but his eyes do darken. It's not about being the bad guy. It's about the cost of getting what you want. And trust me, you're not ready to pay it. I study him for a moment, trying to read between the lines. He's holding something back. I can feel it, like a secret stuffed in his back pocket. Listen, I say, my fingers twitching towards the door. I'm not here for your cryptic nonsense. Either you tell me what happens next, or I walk through this door and we both find out. His eyes flash, a flicker of something dangerous, something older than the world around us. And for a moment, I wonder if I've pushed too far. You're playing a dangerous game, he says quietly, but there's something almost pleading in his voice now. And you're about to lose. I laugh, but it's thin, the humor not quite reaching my eyes. I've been losing since I woke up in this freak show. And then, because I am nothing if not a sucker for bad decisions, I step toward the door. It creaks as I touch it like it's alive, like it's been waiting for me all this time. And the world trembles again. Stop, he says, his voice ragged now. You think you're ready for this? For what comes next? You think you're not just a pawn in this twisted game? I turn back to him, eyes narrowed, but my hand stays on the door's handle. I'm not afraid of your game. I'm already in it. For a moment, just a moment, I see something flicker behind his eyes. Not amusement, not even frustration, but something that looks a hell of a lot like fear. And that, my dear friend, is enough to make me smile. I open the door. The world falls away. The door swings open with a groan that's almost human, and as I step through, everything shifts. I can feel it instantly. The air is different. It's thinner, like I've crossed into a space between breaths, a place where time has no real grip. The world behind the door isn't dark, but it's empty, like a canvas waiting for something, anything to give it meaning. The walls, or whatever they are, stretch infinitely upward, a deep shade of Nothing. Not black, not white, not gray. Just nothing. I glance behind me to see if the door is still there, but it's gone, vanished, like it never existed in the first place. And then, of course, he's there. The man in the Victorian ghost outfit. The one who somehow doesn't belong here, and yet here he is, standing in the middle of this endless space, like he's the one pulling all the strings. Well, I say, breaking the eerie silence. This place has existential crisis written all over it. Is this what happens if I decide to stay? A void that swallows all meaning? He doesn't respond right away. Instead, he steps forward, his dark eyes taking me in, measuring me. He looks almost sad? No, it's gone before I can even finish the thought. You shouldn't have come here, he finally says, his voice almost distant. I cross my arms, suddenly feeling very alone in this endless emptiness. But I did, and now I'm here. So what's the play now? Gonna lecture me some more, or do I get the "you're not ready for the truth" speech? He steps closer, his presence making the empty space feel even more oppressive. The air hums with a low, vibrating tension, like the world itself is holding its breath. No, he says softly. I'm going to give you a choice. One you won't be able to ignore. I snort, because at this point, choices are my favorite thing. Oh? More choices. Just what I needed. What are the options this time? Eat my soul or drink the Kool-Aid? He doesn't laugh, but I swear I see a flicker of something in his eyes. A ghost of amusement. Or maybe it's pity. You can stay here, he says, his tone heavy with meaning. With me, in this world, where nothing matters, but everything is possible. You can shape this place, mold it to your will. You'll never feel alone, never be bored, and you'll have the power to do anything you want. I laugh, a short, sharp sound. And what do you get out of it? My undying affection? My soul to add to your collection? Or do you just enjoy watching me stumble into your twisted little games? His gaze darkens, but he doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. I raise an eyebrow, studying him carefully. And the other option? What's the price for waking up? His lips tighten. You already know the price. The moment you started collecting those shards, you sealed your fate. It's not about whether you want to wake up. It's about what you're willing to leave behind. I'm silent for a long moment, the weight of his words sinking in. The shards pulse in my pocket, reminding me of what I've collected, what I've become. You think you can just walk away from this? He asks, almost pitying, almost taunting. I don't say anything. Instead, I reach into my pocket and pull out the shards, the jagged pieces of this broken world. They hum, each one alive with the same dark energy that's been following me since the beginning. What's the price, really? I ask, my voice quiet but sure. I've got the shards. I've walked through the door. I'm here. What happens now? He steps closer, so close that I can feel the heat of his presence. And for a second, I think he's going to tell me. The big secret, the dark truth. But instead, he just looks at me, his eyes unreadable. You're the price, he says finally. You've always been the price. The moment you chose, you became the price. For everything. The shards in my hand vibrate violently now, as if they're trying to break free of my grip. And in that moment, I realize, this isn't just about me. It never was. The door is gone. The world is unraveling around me, and I'm the one holding it all together. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. And then, because I know there's no going back, I make my decision. I throw the shards into the void and watch the world break. I toss the shards into the abyss, but instead of falling, they explode, sending cracks through the nothingness. The world around me begins to bend, twist, and break like reality's playing a cruel game of Jenga. Every shattered piece of the void whispers to me, calling to me. and suddenly I understand. I am the chaos. I am the destruction and the rebirth. His eyes widen, but I don't care. I smile, sharp as glass. If I'm staying, then I'm creating. And the madness, it's mine now. Every last drop of it. Every last drop of it. Every last drop.
Jingles. I moved the knife quickly, slicing with apt purpose. The bell of the cat's collar fell to the floor. Jingle, jingle. This was the third time I've done this since we first got this cat. I just can't stand the jingling of the collar, and I wanted it to look like the cat had somehow clawed it off, or had rubbed it against something outside, causing it to scrape off. Hopefully, my family will stop insisting that the cat have a bell on her collar after realizing she's just going to keep losing it. Nothing against the cat, of course. Each time I cut that bell off of her collar, she just looks up at me curiously, possibly even thankfully, as if she too can't stand the sound of its jingling. Though I'm certain that the cat and I hate the sound of small jingling bells for two very different reasons. My wife, our 3 kids, and I recently moved to my old hometown. I was eager to leave this place as soon as I turned 18, and I couldn't explain to my wife why I didn't want to move back. The same reason why I can't explain to her why I hate the sound of jingling. I was just a kid. One summer here, when I was 12, my friends and I were hanging out on Main Street. "I want strawberry," the little kid exclaimed. They were probably 6 or 7, and they bounced excitedly up and down with a shining grin from one ear to the other, their hands raised up, one clenched around a handful of change. They were smiling adoringly up at the clown, who was dancing in front of an ice cream truck. Turning to the little boy with a smirk and a wink, the clown sang, "For $1, 1 strawberry. I've prepared it for you, especially." The clown was tall and slender. The makeup around his face was white with dark pink triangles around his mouth as well as his eyes, which were both wide and kind. He wore a large sky blue drape over a striped unitard with different shades of gold and purple with bright red accents. He wore a thick belt around his waist. At points around this belt, as well, from threads of the blue drape, hung small, brass and shiny bells, which rang a chorus of jingling with every movement, and sang a nameless tune whenever he danced. And how this clown loved to dance. "Mr. Jingles! Mr. Jingles!" another kid cried. "Can I have an ice cream sandwich?" The clown, Mr. Jingles, widened his eyes as he looked down at her. He took a deep breath as his smile grew and said, "You're the first today to say my name. This one is for free." He gave her a free ice cream sandwich and did another dance as his feet kicked out, revealing 2 more jingling bells, each one attached to the tip of each of his curled shoes. He did little magic tricks with his hands, and all the children around him laughed and cheered. Some even tried mimicking his dance around him. My friends and I sat on our bikes at a distance, watching the laughable spectacle. "I betcha he diddles kids," Richie said with a snort. "Nah," Brady retorted. "My mom says he's retarded. He probably doesn't even know what to do with his junk." We all laughed at that. I scoffed, saying, "Whatever his problem is, he's fucking creepy." "Ain't that the truth?" Levi said. "I can't be the only one who wants to do something about this guy." Each one of us turned to look at Levi. We didn't really have a leader, but if there was ever a title holder for lead troublemaker, it was Levi. We knew he had something brewing in his mind ever since he first saw Mr. Jingles, and I was eager to stick it to that clown. "What you thinking?" I asked, a mischievously wide smile growing on my face. "Simple," Levi said coldly. "We fuck with the clown until he leaves, and we make sure he stays gone." I had the simple job of distracting the clown. I thought this was the dumbest role placement in the history of pranks, seeing as I was never much of an actor. So when I walked up to Mr. Jingles, I just did what first came to my mind and started asking questions. "Hey, clown, what flavors you got?" Mr. Jingles whirled in my direction. The quickness of that sudden movement and my proximity to him, I realized I was much more scared of this clown than I had initially thought I ever could be. "Little kiddo," Mr. Jingles exclaimed, "I've got flavors to match the rainbow." He kicked a leg out in a small dance maneuver. "I've got sweets to make your hair grow." He laughed. "I've got strawberry and chocolate, and long as you've got your wallet, I've got vanilla and mint, with a flashy green tint. There's pistachio and Neapolitan, but try not to get it on your chin." He laughed and chuckled, and that innocent sound within it made me start to think that maybe he didn't deserve to get ran out of town. I couldn't explain it, but he soothed me. All the fear and enmity I felt towards the clown seemed so unjustified now. But it was too late. Richie and Brady started banging against the hood of the ice cream truck while making guttural monkey noises. Mr. Jingles turned, his wide smile melting away in a thin line of confusion. He walked over to my friends, saying, "Heyo, kiddos, how about, and was cut off when the truck's engine started. The clown's head turned, and his mouth opened to a wide O of shock as he looked through the windshield. Levi was in the driver's seat and had turned on the truck. He started to run and shouted, "Oh no, kiddo. Mr. Jingles doesn't think," and was interrupted again when Richie pushed the clown over Brady, who was knelt behind him. The two ran away laughing. I was about to run too, and that's when I realized that Levi had more planned for what was meant to be a spread-out string of pranks on Mr. Jingles. As the clown gasped on the pavement, Levi revved the engine and then put the car in drive. He dove out of the side of the truck and sprinted down the block, faster than I'd ever seen him run before. I turned back, just in time to watch as Mr. Jingles' ice cream truck ran over his midsection. This caused the vehicle to swerve, forcing the rear tires to crush the clown's face. The body of the clown convulsed and spazzed, a monstrous ringing of disturbed jingling from the bells overlaid the tones of crushing bones, and a sound like that of a tossed watermelon. I was motionless and numb in indescribable horror as the vehicle rolled softly away, and I looked at the smeared remains of what used to be a human face. Blood gushed spastically out of a gaping maw that was once the mouth of Mr. Jingles, and more of it oozed out of his ears and coagulated in the ruffled tangles of his dyed pink hair. I stepped back, slowly at first, then turned and ran in the same direction as my friends. We were never named for that crime, though I knew my dad had his suspicions that we had something to do with it. It wouldn't be for a few years later that I wished we had come clean. After all, it was just supposed to be a prank. I don't think Richie and Brady thought Levi would do something like that, and I certainly didn't. I think I was just scared of what Levi would do if he ever found out I ratted him out. So I stayed silent. Now that I'm back here, all these years later, I stood outside our house in the dead of night with my cat and her recently defaced collar at my feet. And I wondered if the mysterious death of Mr. Jingles is still talked about, and if anyone ever thought of any leads. I wondered why it was so difficult to get in touch with Richie or Brady or their families. Maybe I would try to get in touch with Levi, but part of me doesn't want to see the man he grew up to be. A thick fog was creeping down the street. I watched as it grew, frothing up my driveway. I began to wonder if the reason why I couldn't get a hold of my friends was more simple and yet more outlandish than anything more feasible than moving away. The fog had reached my feet, and the cat meowed frightfully, and with a hiss ran somewhere behind the house. But here I stood, watching the wall of unnaturally decisive fog move towards and envelop me. I stood here, waiting for what I knew I had been due for some time. I know it wouldn't matter if I tried to run from it or not, because I'm here in this town, and the consequences of my part in a joke gone wrong are here to greet me. Through the thick fog, I can hear the distorted sound of an ice cream truck's song approaching, and through the fainted beat can be made out the cacophonous ringing, as if some pair of jingling bells attached to two slippered feet. Jingle, jingle, he's right behind you. we'd go out around one, climbing through bedroom windows. We'd try to land softly on bushes and backyard lawns. Some of us went barefoot. Some hid a spare pair of sneakers under porches or tucked under tarps used for covering patio furniture. Some of us just liked being barefoot. It made us feel as though we'd have the strength that comes from mimicking the uncivilized. Some of us would play the whole game with no shoes. No shoes, no shirts. One of us liked to play the game in only his boxer shorts. He would dare anyone to mention his near nakedness. I'm not gay for running around the woods in my underwear. You're all gay for looking at me in my underwear. This is teenage logic. Everything is a chess match where both players have only recently discovered how to play Monopoly. Board games were daytime affairs. We would play them by the above-ground pools and in basements while our parents were at work. We were old enough to be home alone, provided we memorized the phone numbers of all the retired neighbors who could, theoretically, get to us quickly in the event of an emergency. Practically speaking, 70-year-old Mrs. Hasher would not have been able to help any of us had a deranged murderer targeted us the way they did in the cable movies we weren't supposed to watch. But our parents told themselves stories the same way we did. Stories about safety. Stories about good neighborhoods. Stories about how much a locked door could accomplish. Years ago, a girl had been abducted from her home on our street. But the rumor was she opened the door when a stranger knocked. Our parents didn't say it, but they secretly believed that meant she deserved to be kidnapped. I mean, if your kid is dumb enough to open up the door for just anybody, they told themselves that we, their children, were smarter than that. Smarter than that girl. We were not smarter. We were, in fact, a lot dumber than her. Of course, we didn't know that. We thought we were geniuses. Genius, warrior, punks with wisdom and ferocity, and all before our 15th birthday. We believed people were jealous of us, but we didn't know who these people might be. We believed that everyone at school had gone to at least second base, and we were ashamed to have never seen a naked girl in real life. We laughed at the word condom, but we believed, given the opportunity, that we would be intrinsically fantastic at lovemaking. At school, we had posters in our locker of Sarah Michelle Gellar and Jennifer Love Hewitt, and those of us who had gone to first base had that one poster of Cameron Diaz that would have gotten us suspended if a teacher saw it. We'd gather at each other's lockers and discuss the arrangements for the game that night. We'd agree on a spot in the woods. Some of us liked meeting at the tree that had been split in half by lighting. Some liked the rock formation that resembled an old man kneeling with his head down. Once the location was agreed upon, we'd argue about the time. Some of us wanted to meet at midnight on the dot. We didn't realize that we were in love with the poetry of it. Because we swore we hated poetry based on what our teachers had us read. Some wanted to do it later, much later. Some wanted to meet at 3 or 4 so that the game would last until dawn. Tomorrow, Saturday. We don't have school. What's the problem? The problem was that some of our parents got up around dawn. Some of our mothers would have a heart attack if they woke up and found our beds empty. Some of us didn't want to worry our parents. Some of our fathers used a belt if we misbehaved. Some of us cared about our parents too much to let them know what their children were up to at night. Some of us feared our parents more than we feared anything in the woods. Some of us feared nothing. Some of us loved the idea of being gone when our parents woke up, making them think that we'd escaped, that we were on a runway train somewhere, moving further and further away from them. Some of us liked the feeling of the belt on our skin because it solidified the hate we felt for the people we were meant to love the hardest. We'd usually meet a little after 1. If it was warm out, we'd meet by the lake where the summer camp used to be until it went out of business. The cabins were still there, and the picnic tables, and the signs that said mess hall and nurse's office. The paint on the signs was fading. Vines were growing over the cabin windows. We didn't explore the camp at night. Even the bravest among us weren't that fearless. We'd seen at least one horror movie that took place at a camp. And we didn't want to be chased by a man with a mask. We only wanted to play a game. In our game, if you followed the rules, you didn't get hurt. Nothing bad happened. If you broke the rules, the game was over for you. But that was it. No injuries, no harm. It was all about stamina, sustaining yourself throughout the night. There wasn't really any loss. There wasn't even a real way to win. Bragging rights were all we had to play for. And yet, they seemed more valuable than the $100 bills our fathers would leave out on the kitchen counter as though tempting us to steal. Some of us did steal. Some of us felt the belt. Some of us liked it. But we'd never say who. We started by the lake, and we faced off against each other, eye to eye, with another boy standing a foot away from you. That was how it began. We would face each other, take a deep breath, and say, "He's right behind you." One of us would say it, the other would listen. Then the other person would say it, "He's right behind you," and we would escalate the intensity. The rule was that you could not say anything other than those 4 words, but you could say them however you liked. We could shout them at each other. We could whisper them. Those of us who were more strategic knew that volume wasn't enough. It was about having an action, an objective. It was important to keep a verb in mind: beg, cajole, beseech, caution, plead, convince, convince, convince. He's right behind you. It didn't matter that we played this game several times a week for 2 years. It didn't matter that we knew that nobody was behind us. Inevitably, someone would get spooked. One of us would run home. That first hint of terror was contagious. Soon, more of us would be retreating back to our homes. It was rare that more than 3 or 4 of us would be left by the end of the night. If your partner ran away, you would find someone else who had also lost their partner. And you would face off against them, speaking the 4 words. If you were the only one without a partner, you stood silently and waited for someone to leave. Like most boys our age, we had no respect for anything we were meant to respect, and the utmost respect for imaginary things and made-up scenarios, school and church and authority and death were all laughable to us. But this game that we had created out of nothing, this was something to be taken seriously. None of us could remember who started it. Maybe an older boy who had since graduated from childishly sneaking out of his room at night. Maybe we all put it together like a story composed of hormones and dirty sweat. Maybe it didn't matter. All that mattered was keeping it alive for as long as we could. We never spoke of the game outside of planning it between classes at our lockers. We never talked about who was good at it or bad at it. We never talked about who stayed the longest or who left first. We just played. We played, and we never planned to stop playing. One night, one of us was staring at his partner when he saw the other boy's eyes look slightly to the left. This was against the rules. You only looked at your partner. You used the 4 words to scare them, if you could. You didn't involve physicality, not even a slight shift in focus. The other boy began to shake his head. This was wrong. This was against the rules. None of us knew what to do if someone broke the rules, because nobody had ever broken the rules. There were no referees, and even if there were, it wouldn't have mattered now, because there were only 2 boys left on that night. The other boy appeared to almost choke. He coughed out the words, "He's right behind you." The other boy looked as though he was going to raise an arm, raise a hand, point to something. Instead, he ran off. The other boy wasn't supposed to run off. You were supposed to wait until the other person said the 4 words. You were supposed to give them a chance to scare you back. One of us stood there that night, all alone, and felt an immense pride extending down his shoulders and off into the ground below his feet. He was the only one left. A laugh barked past his lips. It was a nervous laugh, but he didn't know where the nerves were coming from, and he wondered if he could get home before his father banged on his door to wake him up for school. If not, it would be the belt. But did that mean anything? He was the last one of us still standing there in the woods. He's right behind me. He didn't know why he said it. It wasn't true. There was nobody behind him. Every sound was natural. Every presence an imagined one. Every instinct to flee was his paranoia trying to torment him now that all his fellow competitors were gone. He would stand in the woods for as long as he liked. He would enjoy this moment. Despite winning nothing, he would tell himself he was a winner. He was no longer one of us. He was someone else. He's right behind me, but the game was over. There was nobody left to scare. Blood rain. It wasn't the red aliens that were the problem. It was the voodoo high priests that caused all the mischief. Monkey hands, parrot beaks, and baboon skulls were one thing. But when the blood rains came, all of the usual cons kicked into high gear. The mantis-like, spindly red alien surveyed my vegetables with an air of fascination. He stopped on the okra, holding up a stalk and studying it. He was dressed in ripped, whitewashed jeans and a Blink 182 t-shirt. But behind his disguise was a standard silver spandex jumpsuit, like they all wore when they came into town to creep around. Whatever else you could say about the red aliens, they were creepers by nature, with no sense of boundaries. I just wanted him to move along. I clenched a final notice of foreclosure auction in my hand, as if taking out my anger on the paper would save the family ranch. Yahya Gaban took the deed to our ranch in foreclosure. Yahya was a cattle herder, but before that, he had been a TAF general and still had pull with the government. Yahya was hard, implacable, unyielding, a real monster. Yahya once shot and killed a 6-year-old boy playing in his grazing pastures while the child begged for his life. The laws allowed one to protect their land from intruders. When asked why he'd done it, Yahya had said, "The signs on the perimeter say, 'Stay out, trespassers shot on sight.' Wouldn't mean nothing if I didn't follow through." The Police Nacional who had questioned him said, "Yahya, the kid was illiterate. Guess he should have paid more attention in school." Yahya had said. The way Yahya looked at it was, when he set his eye on what's yours, it was his if he could find a way to take it from you. Uncle Kofi was missing an eye from turning the other cheek in a fight as a boy. But the rock in the other kid's hand had landed just right and shot the eyeball clean out. Uncle Kofi was a pacifist who wouldn't even swat a mosquito. So this was no contest. I had told Uncle Kofi we should just give up the ranch. We couldn't afford it. But Uncle Kofi was superstitious. He believed that fate could be wooed. A few weeks earlier, I had gone with Uncle Kofi to the Ako Desawa fetish market and met with Guédenon Benoit, the voodoo man. We entered his office, as he called it, which was a hut. with a square-framed doorway lined with human skulls that looked like a no-frills mine shaft leading into a catacomb. The standing air inside was stiff, musky, and moist. The walls of the inner chamber were filled with the dried heads of dogs, monkeys, birds, naxos, and every imaginable living thing you could think of. You could almost hear the animal sounds echo from the clay walls. Uncle Kofi gasped at the abundance of spirits filling this hovel. I did not share his sense of wonder. I joked to myself, internally, that this was the great roadkill emporium of Lomé. Here it is, Guédanon said, his rounded jowls stubbled with patches of white, and his bald head shining from the torchlight. The basket was filled with little dried chameleons, with their helmet-shaped heads adorned with horns and bony lumps, like modern-day dinosaurs. It smelled like furry jerky, dried in the humid, tropical breeze. Yes, here we are. After putting a handful of chameleons in a basket, Guédanon gathered a handful of dried parrots, each withered down to the size of a famished mouse. Now, to change your luck, you will grind up the chameleon and grind up the parrot. Guédanon depicted the grinding while he spoke, taking up a pewter bowl and mallet to make the demonstration, the torchlight reflecting off his bald forehead. You will mix this with soap and bathe yourself in it. Do this 2 times a day. 3 days, not a day more, not a day less. Uncle Kofi tapped Guédanon on the shoulder while he looked for some other nonsense to sell us. Did you hear about the Dulaba? You mean about the strangers whose minds could not be read? They were talking about these totems at the village gates by our farm that look like men sitting cross-legged, with arms extruded and heads of black tar, with seashells for eyes. The guardians, or Dulaba, are supposed to be able to scan the minds of foreigners entering the village to discern if they have ill intent. I heard that the Westerners, the lanky ones, who appeared before the blood rains, I heard that none of the priests could discern their purpose from the Duleba, Uncle Kofi said. It is true, Guédanon told him. I wanted to scream. They are red aliens, you moron. No one knows what they want. But I couldn't say anything, or I'd be committed. I was the only one who could see them ever since I was a child. I had been hiking on Mont Agu, exploring its ridges, when I saw a light in the mist and stumbled upon their cliffside observatory. Normally, it was cloaked, but something about the vapors in the mist had screwed with the effect, did something to the light. When I walked into what looked like a temple from the outside, I saw a screen wrapping around the length of the chamber in a semicircle. Large, spindly red, mantis-like creatures with 4 legs on their hind parts were engrossed in the readings, and images on their screens, tapping away with long, bony fingers on the consoles in front of them. One of them turned its hooded eyes and triangular face in my direction and screamed, the pincers on the sides of its mouth flaring in fright. A group of them rushed toward me. I shielded my face, but they were not violent. That was when they gave me the scarab beetle amulet that allowed me to recognize them despite their cloaking tech, and explained to me about the bright blue marble we inhabit. They said, "It is not that Earth is special. There are plenty of habitable worlds with natural wonders. It is the size of the moon that counts. Our mission is to scan the cosmos to find other worlds that can host life. Other worlds with just the right size of moon." I had pressed the aliens as to why this was the case, and they had elaborated and explained everything in great detail, but I couldn't understand much of it. The only worlds that host life are those worlds with a moon that is just the right size to create a total solar eclipse, one of the red aliens said. And once that sacred syzygy goes out of balance or is disrupted, life moves on. I had asked why they didn't just place moons around any planets with the right characteristics. He said, "There is a directive against playing God. Each civilization rises and falls on its own merits. When the time comes, a people either mature and venture out from their home or are snuffed out." It sounded dramatic back then, but these days, I don't know that a fair judge would deem us worthy of salvation, least of all us Togolese, who were forever finding reasons to kill and brutalize one another. The red aliens come from a sad, timeless dimension, much like Togo. On their world, there are tiny microbes in the soil that cover everything in shades of red. The microbes are in the air, the soil, the water, and can lay dormant for centuries, which is what is causing the blood rains. So much of this stuff is filtered out of the observatory that when they are here, they are literally pumping red dye into the clouds, day in and day out. In Togo, the next calamity is always waiting right around the corner, and word travels fast in Lomé. To stir people into a panic only takes the smallest of rumors. Strange lights flashing around Mad Agu. Tall, spindly men in strange clothing, loitering in the market. Match that up with omens like blood rain and a lunar eclipse, and the entire populace was stewing with anxiety and murmuring up a storm. Especially Uncle Coffee. It was great for the priests. But you know what terror and intrigue is bad for? Selling vegetables and fattening cows, and for all of the divination and soothsaying about how the bloodshed of decades gone by would be punished unless the land was purified. How those cries reaching to heaven would compel the Almighty to blot out the sun. Despite all of that, all this voodoo accomplished was to tear into old wounds and inspire fresh political violence. Everyone in the suburban villages and the slums blamed someone for their troubles and sought protection or aid from the priests. The radicals blamed the Union Party and the rich Kabyé tribe for subjugating the masses and censoring speech. For this and for that, and prayed for their downfall. The Union Party blamed the radicals for deceiving the public with lies and doubled down on censorship. And the disputes were much the same in the suburbs. Each side thought the other evil. Each side saw the issue as one-sided. Good versus evil. In a way, each side was right, and each side was wrong. And our people, splintered in 1,000 factions, with no unifying principle, pointed fingers at each other, much the same as our governors did. And old feuds spilled out into bloodshed. And Yahya had sent a man to tell Uncle Kofi he'd be coming to the ranch the next day. And it was time we cleared out. I gripped the crumpled notice in a tight fist and looked up at the stranger, the red alien at my vegetable stall in the Lomé Grand Market, grabbed one of my best okra plants and gave it a once-over, not knowing I could see through his disguise. "How much for one of these?" he asked in French. "Why are you here?" "I am looking for vegetables to thicken a stew." "Cut the shit," I said. "We've been having blood rain for the past 2 months." The red alien laughed heartily. "It's just from dust kicked up into the atmosphere from a dust storm. For 2 months? Dust doesn't take 2 months to settle. Maybe it is some kind of algae, like a red tide. It stained all my white clothes. It burned the leaves off the trees. People are using it to tattoo skin. What do you think it is?" "I know what it is. Red alien bugs. What else?" His buggy eyes bulged, and his forehead furrowed. Then he settled into realization. "You're her. You're Dora Igwe. Dora the Explorer. The one who found us in the flesh. Do you want to come watch the eclipse with us?" "Why would I do that?" "It is an important celestial event. No disrespect. But it gets dark once a day. It's called night. I really don't get the novelty." "You wouldn't, would you?" "I guess it's like the suddenness of the enveloping darkness. It is metaphorical. Sometimes, you know, it is later than you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know, your people believe that war and bloodshed are like a virus, that it infects even the sun and the moon. And when the sun and moon get to quarreling, that brings about the eclipse, a final warning to change your ways." Those are just Batamaliba folk stories. They say the first mothers, Puka Puka and Kuyekok, told the villagers that the darkening of the sun was a warning to make amends for old feuds and live in peace, and the light will return. You are a spacefaring team of scientific explorers. You know this is an astrological, mathematical event. It has nothing to do with violence. Don't be so sure, child. There is much you do not understand. As the red alien turned and walked up the long, dusty road to the forest switchbacks, he turned and said, "Come watch with us, if you want." In the observatory, we waited for the eclipse. The red aliens were frantic. The one from earlier, who I'd nicknamed Tommy, took the controls and lifted the ship to a hover. "We've got to find a better vantage point," he said, as the ship floated through the Tongolese countryside outside Lomé. I could feel the eerie shadow chasing us down. The sky was full of fast-moving clouds, and a low mist hung to the valley floor, slinking down the mountain slopes and resting on the fields. The ship came to rest in Yahya's grazing lands, and the moon obstructed the sun. The red aliens gasped with a sound like the whistling of the wind. Like I said, though, I'm not superstitious. The whole thing seemed a bit overblown to me, but there it was, the total eclipse. A black orb with the faintest halo of red, set against a black, overcast, and moonless sky. Tommy turned to another red alien, who I'd known for years, and had nicknamed Freddy, and said, "The satellite has started moving too close. It is only a matter of time now. Isn't everything?" Freddy asked. "Hey, what is he talking about?" I asked. "Don't you worry, child," Freddy said. "When the time has come, it will all happen very quickly. She doesn't know we are here for the moon," Tommy blurted out. "It is just the right size for the colony in HD 1106-7, Freddy said. Freddy made a gesture to shush him. But it was too late. I had heard it. So, for all our worries about our earthly disputes, this was what the end of the world looked like. At least I wouldn't end up being homeless. That had been the thought I'd been obsessing over for days. I went to look out the back window, and it was just like Freddy had said. It was coming quickly. Yahya was in the cab, rolling the excavator toward the ship, and the dipper and bucket were swinging down and about to crash through the ceiling. The sound was deafening. Shards of metal and other materials rained down. Wires and diodes and mechanical pieces pelted our heads and the ground. The red aliens shrieked. Tommy was holding Freddy like a kid in a theater caught with an unexpected jump scare. I ran out in the fields, under the dark, moonless sky. Yahya raised the bucket over and over, caving in the roof of the ship and tearing huge chunks of the fuselage out into his fields. Yahya was smoking a Cuban cigar, and I could hear him yelling, "Serves you right. Trespassers." I guess a similar thing would happen soon to our ranch house, in the family for 5 generations. Maybe the barn, too. That seemed to be the way of things, to tear down the old to make way for the new. Especially here in Togo. Tommy made it out of the ship, only to be met by the blast of a shotgun. "Got one," Yahya shouted. I just watched, frozen. The blast tore Tommy's torso nearly in half, felling him. The blood poured and oozed out onto the dark fields. The pool of blood was red, just like ours. I guess, however different we are on the outside, maybe all living things bleed red. We are a thirsty bunch, the living hungering after that red nectar, to stir it, to shed it, to pool it, and collect it. Then Yahya turned to me and pointed the shotgun at my face. "Run," he said. "Get off my land." And I ran through the pitch-dark fields in the cool of the eclipse, crying as I waited for a gunshot that never came. Yahya yelled after me, "Enjoy your home while you can. I'll be coming for it." And he laughed, a bellowing stomach laugh, an eerie, chortling, bone-chilling laugh, inevitable, unquenchable, soulless. And as I ran, tripping on rocks, legs cut by tall grasses, I saw sirens in the night. At least 12 SUVs. The Gendarmerie Nationales, the National Guard. They were coming for Yahya, alerted by the gunshots and the carnage. A tall, friendly Fed with a pock-marked face jumped out of one of the vehicles and tried to grab me. "It's okay now. We've got this," he said. But I wrestled away from him. As I made it to the clearing and the dirt road, I dared a glance back at the haloed specter of the eclipse. I hoped Uncle Kofi would be back at the kitchen table, waiting for me with some vegetable soup, blissfully impervious to the warring entities ravaging our lands. The blood rains fell in a torrent, coating the dirt road in a river of blood. I guess not all monsters are created equal. Ours take life without reason or remorse, just because they can. A sliver of light emerged from the fading eclipse as I reached the drive to the ranch house, lighting my path, warming the shadows. Uncle Coffee was at the door, the smell of the fetish soap on his skin. "Our luck is changing," he said. The selfie of Dorian Gray. Picture this. Dorian Gray, 25, gorgeous bachelor of the Brighton, gay scene handsome, F Queen sleigh. Picture his blazing blue eyes set above aquiline nose and a rosebud pout of a mouth. Cheeks ready to blush under the lick of glitter from a makeup brush. Deep gold locks styled to perfection. Forehead wide and empty as a summer sky. Beauty not brains image as everything skin deep. Picture this. Dorian perched on the sleek leather and chrome of a bar stool in the poison ivy. Margarita in one hand and phone in the other. Twin totems of the god of the gay bar. Picture his thumb hitting the camera app. Muscle memory leads him there always, and hovering now over the shutter button. Picture him pausing for a fragment of time to check the image on the phone screen. It is, as always, empty perfection. Click. There it is. The button is pressed. The shutter closes. The selfie is taken. And all around him, life continues in the poison ivy. The disco ball spins. Lady Gaga roars through over-amplified speakers. A drag queen at the bar wipes lipstick and white wine from a red twist of a mouth. But for Dorian Gray, life has stopped. Here. Now. In this moment. The moment the selfie was taken. Live in the moment. Look. Good, feel good. Self-love. Because, as he licks the salt rim of his margarita glass from perfectly glossed lips, Dorian realizes that he has taken the best selfie ever. What is it about this selfie that makes it so exquisite? Is it the background of dancers blurring to hot whirls of color? Is it the shards of light from the disco ball falling like a shower of diamonds across the face? No. It is the face itself, caught at the very moment of its blooming, like a young rose. Beautiful. Dorian knows, the instant he sees the selfie, that there, right there in front of him, swimming in a million pixels, is the great truth he searched for his whole life. Beauty. What would you like? The barman asks, plucking an olive from a discarded martini glass and popping it into his lipsticked mouth. I'd like, says Dorian. I'd like it if this selfie aged instead of me. You what? The barman hollers over Gaga's jagged vocals. I'd like another margarita, Dorian says, but Dorian's wish came true. Picture this. Years later, Dorian is flicking through his phone when up pops the selfie. Throwback. Memories. 10-year challenge. Picture Dorian, 35, and still on the cusp of blooming like a young rose, locking eyes with the image of his 25-year-old self, but not the image as he left it 10 years previously. No. For etched into the selfie, right there in front of him, are the tide lines of age, wrinkles beginning to show on the forehead, the skin wilting around the aquiline nose, twin creases either side of the rosebud pout of a mouth. Dorian sees, too, a certain sneer, a certain curl of the lip, not present in the original selfie #bitchface, #meangirl, /judging you. Was it the many times he'd put others down on the basis of their looks? The many ugly comments he'd made on another's ugliness that had written that sneer into the selfie? Did the curl of the lip evidence a life lived in selfishness, selfie stick in hand, and judgment in mind? Dorian swipes off the selfie, a cold sweat of horror breaking out on his preternaturally youthful brow. He tries putting a softening filter on the selfie, hoping to erase those harsh lines. But the app glitches and increases the contrast on the image, only etching those lines deeper into brow and cheek. Like a narcissus staring into troubled waters, Dorian recoils in disgust from the sight of his own image. Oh, not feeling cute, bad hair day, he clicks off the app, fingers barely shaking, and runs to the bathroom. Looking into the perfect circle of the stylish chrome-rimmed mirror, home decor interior design, trendsetter, Dorian scours his face for wrinkles, blemishes, imperfections. But he finds, as always, the same strange youth, the same pure beauty that is synonymous with his reputation in gay bars, from the pier to the marina. Hands clammy on the cold porcelain of the sink, Dorian exhales and spits from his perfect mouth the salivation that warns him he will vomit. Leaning over the toilet, he pukes onto the perfect white porcelain, loops of saliva falling from his face like hot tears of shame and disgrace. Dorian commits himself to a life of velvety pleasures and empty aesthetics. He progresses his modeling career at the London fashion shows. Strike, oppose, model life, catwalk. In his spare time, he buys designer handbags in the lanes and showcases his latest outfits in the bars of Kemp Town. At night, the selfie haunts his dreams, mouth twisted in hideous grin, cheek disgraced by defects, brow wrecked by wrinkles, a face defaced by imperfections. The years pass in a blur of nights spent knocking back shots in Bulldog, Cheers, down at happy hour. But still, Dorian's face stays young. He courts a beautiful drag queen, name of Sybil, dreams of the lavish wedding they'll have. In bars, they sip sex on the beach together and rate the other twinks on their looks in loud whispers. Roast me, 2 out of 10. Fugly. In dark bedrooms with drawn curtains, they smoke Tina with hookers and dropouts. At the nudist beach, they work on their tans, but soon Dorian and Sybil are fighting. Conversation withering to ridicule and cheap digs. Picture this. The couple at 2 a.m. on St. James Street, roaring insults and comebacks at each other with beer-soaked breath, like baying stags. "You're a right bitch," Dorian screams. "A nasty, cheap, tranny whore." He flings his pint glass to the gutter and struts off into the night. Picture this. Dorian is 45. And as his age has increased, so too has his reputation for youthful good looks. He launches his own line of face cream, skincare, anti-aging results. He proposes to Sybil. They break it off. They get back together. They break it off again. The night they call off the engagement for the second time, Dorian sits somber at the dressing table in his bedroom. He stares into the vanity mirror, his face flawless, even in the bright white light of the bare bulbs, searching for flaws, any clue as to why Sybil left him. But he finds, as always, perfection. The selfie haunts his thoughts like an unwelcome ghost. He pulls out his phone and clicks on the photo app. He pulls up the selfie and finds it more hideous than ever. crow's feet at the corners of the eyes, scoops of black shadow underneath them, a complex network of wrinkles deep cut into the face. And still, that hideous, exaggerated sneer, like the face of a horrible puppet. "It's just a selfie," he says. "It doesn't look like me. I cannot look that bad, surely." Reassuring himself, Dorian decides to take action. Why let a selfie ruin your night? Why let a photo curb your self-esteem? Quickly, before he changes his mind, Dorian clicks on the bin icon. A message flashes up on the screen. Delete photo. He pauses for just a fraction of a second, shaking finger hovering over the button, and presses it. Picture this. Sybil, the next day, hungover and contrite and missing her boyfriend, mounting the stairs to Dorian's flat in her stilettos. Heel clicks echoing in the otherwise silent stairwell. She knocks on the door. Silence. She fumbles in her rhinestoned handbag for the spare key and lets herself in. Inside the flat, everything is in its usual perfect order. Dorian's designer coats hang in the entranceway. A half-drunk bottle of Chablis sits on the marble worktop, illuminated like a yellow jewel in the beam of a kitchen spotlight. The Dyson Tower fan blasts out cool air in the lounge. 2,000 watts, or 700 cubic meters per hour. Ultimate cooling technology. It blasts a jet of cold across Sybil's fish-netted legs, like an icy river or a ghost passing through her. Dorian? Silence still. She checks everywhere, and letting herself into the last room, the bedroom, she finds it empty. She pulls back the bed sheets. Nothing. But seeing the door of the walk-in wardrobe ajar, she opens it to find, picture this, Dorian hanging by his neck from the rail. At first, she doesn't recognize him, for the swollen, purple face of the dead man is ugly, carved with deep wrinkles, pocked with blemishes, the lip curled up in a final expression of disdain. By his side, there lies his phone, safe and sound. Safe and sound. 7:15 a.m. Go downstairs. Phone fully charged. Remove cable. Stare at phone wallpaper. Not familiar. Photo of huge oak in West Park at end of my street, where Rich proposed. Maybe took it yesterday. Maybe not. Not sure. Stare more. Check for messages. Mum, Sarah, Rich. Rich? Not heard from him in ages. Is he okay? Oh, he's replying to me. I didn't message him. I must have. Yes, look. Asked if he had a good weekend. Sent 23:03 yesterday. Was in bed by 10. Must have got up. Come downstairs. Forgotten. Sleepwalking. Again. Getting regular now. See a doctor. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Rich is fine. Am I okay? Reply. Short and sweet. Don't encourage the ex from hell. Don't know why I messaged him at all. Ping. It's your move on Words with Friends. What's that? Looks like Scrabble game. Never heard of it. Why is it on my phone? Quick look around it. I have 5 games in play. 5. It's my move in all of them. Didn't drink last night. Uninstall Words with Friends. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Coffee. Cinnamon roll. Sofa. Slightly more awake. Check phone again. More from Rich. Why did you get back in touch? Want to meet up? Ignore. Sarah. She says thanks with thumbs up. Thanks for what? Scroll messages. Yes, she can borrow my copy of Catch-22. Still own Catch-22? Thought I lost it ages ago. Scroll more. Told Sarah I found it. Don't remember that. Check bookshelves later. Reply to Mom. Yes, still coming for dinner on Thursday. Thursday? When did we plan that? Never mind. I'm free. I'll go. Add to calendar. Entry for Saturday. What's that? Date with Tom. No details. No memory of this. Message Tom. Hi, are we meeting this Saturday? 8 a.m. now. Ring for doctor's appointment. 32nd in the queue. Sorry, no more appointments today. Please call back 8 a.m. tomorrow. System is enough to make me need a doctor. Whisper. Safe and sound, safe and sound. Bookshelves. No sign of Catch-22. Check 3 times. What's this? Copy of Never Let Me Go lying on top of other books. I never do that. Do I? Don't remember this edition. Cover is blue with picture of cassette tape. Thought mine was orange with girl in green dress. Flick through it. Pages dog-eared. I never do that. Spine cracked. I never do that. Must be mistaken. Phone beeps. Rich. I can see you're reading my messages. Tom replies, Hi, Grace. Yes. Royal Oak, 2 p.m. Saturday. Remember? You okay? I'm worried about you. He's not the only one. Why don't I remember things I should? Phone announces. There's movement at the front door. Letterbox clangs. Amazon delivery. Thanks, I think. Not expecting anything. Rip open cardboard zip. Copy of Catch-22. Green cover. Same edition I lost. Open Amazon app on phone. Ordered book yesterday. Did I? Didn't know Sarah wanted it till now. Or did I? Coincidence? Put phone down. Deep breath. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Phone alarm sounds. 9 a.m. Take pills. Yes. Take pills. Go to kitchen. Find clean glass. All glasses are clean. When did I wash up? Tap. Water. pills. Swallow. Running low. Need to order repeat prescription. Open browser on phone. Doctors is bookmarked. Multiple tabs already open. What are they? First tab. Google seems about right. Second tab. British Association for Counseling and Psychotherapy. Have I been looking for a therapist? Maybe I need one? Psychiatrist, perhaps more useful? Third tab. Royal Oak. I did book a table for Saturday, maybe. Check for confirmation email. Open Gmail. Premium bonds. You have won a prize. Go to Premium Bonds app. App not there. Check all screens. No sign. Must have uninstalled. Why? We'll check for prizes on website later. Message from Rich. Don't open it. Search Gmail for Royal Oak. Booking confirmation. 3 people, 2 p.m. Saturday. 3 people? Me? Tom? Who else? Message Tom. Who are we meeting on Saturday? He's not online. Phone rings. Withheld number. Hello? Man's voice. Is that Grace? I'm responding to the enquiry you made through my website. Are you still looking for a therapist? Did I do that? Hang up. Rings back. Don't answer. Too weird. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. More coffee. Must order meds. Back to browser. Bookmarks. Medical practice online. Order repeat prescription. Done. Bookmarks. What did I just see? Lingerie site? Wasn't looking at lingerie. Click on link. There are 4 items in your basket. Click on basket. Red peephole bra and matching satin G-string. Pink see-through baby doll. Black crotchless bodysuit. All in my size. None to my taste. Shopping for Tom? Not his thing either. More what Rich would like. Ugh. Empty basket. Delete bookmark. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Phone beeps. Tom. I don't know who we're meeting. You said it was a surprise. See messages from last night. Were you drunk? Surprise for me too. Check last night's messages with Tom. 23. Message deleted. 23:08. Message deleted. 23:12. Message deleted. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Not drunk. Possibly not fully conscious. Sleep texting? Need stronger pills. Call doctor again tomorrow. Good news needed. Open premium bonds. Website online. Password not recognized. Type again. Slowly. Password not recognized. Type again. Very slowly. You only have one more attempt before your account is locked. Was I drunk last night? No. Worked till 8. Home. Showered. changed. Bed by 10. Back to kitchen. Open booze cupboard. 4 ciders and half bottle of Bailey's missing. Sleep drinking? Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. No hangover. Didn't drink all that. Brought friend home. Who drinks? Bed by 10 makes no sense. Would remember someone else in house. Check spare room anyway. No one there. Bed not slept in. Phone beeps. Rich. I have to look. I miss you. Are you ignoring me? Check all rooms. Front door locked. Back door locked. Spare key. Gone. Message Tom. Have you got my spare key? Phone beeps. Sarah. Hey chick. You okay today? Don't suppose you can send me the pic of that new restaurant we saw last week? I knew I'd forget the name. Ha ha ha. Tom replies. Not this time. Gave it back to you on Friday. Are you okay? Check camera roll for Sarah. Multiple pics of girl asleep in bed. Wait, can't have taken these pics. That's me. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. There were way too many flies for an empty house. Schizophrenia is a bitch. And I don't usually curse when I'm writing. I like the classic style of Stephen Crane and the refined worlds of Oscar Wilde. And I know things have changed a lot since this kind of gentleman went extinct. But still, there is something about correct writing that turns everything into poetry. Even these stories. I continue now. Schizophrenia is a bitch. Medicated or unmedicated. Dealing with not knowing what is real or not can still be challenging day by day. From the happy little bunnies hopping out of an unexistent hole to say hi graciously and brighten your day, to the four-eyed woman whose face was falling rotten into pieces in front of my astonished eyes, while she only wanted to offer my breakfast one autumn morning. Anything can be frightening. I thought I was never going to have the courage to move far from the city, far from the hospitals, from the gentrification, and the everyday influx of strangers. It made me calm to know I could just pop out a card from my pocket that shows my mental condition, and people would help me in the most scary situations. Reality pushed me outside of the city. I found the best house to which I could move. Affordable, 2 stories, old cracking wooden floors, unfinished basement, and a big yard with space to grow your vegetables, your very own lavender plants, with the freedom to sit outside and write while listening to nothing but the chickadees and robins singing. No neighbors, no annoying neighbors, because as much as I liked the activity of the city, living in a 24 floors building could be a tiny bit too noisy sometimes. A 100-year-old house that needed some love. Honestly, for the price I paid, I had all the love in the world to give. I didn't overthink before buying it. I didn't want to get into details. so I put the signature on the paper and bought it as it was. The first night was a nightmare. The mice activity was so high in the basements and between the walls that it looked like they were throwing me a welcoming party. My eyes were wide open, and I kept just thinking, I need a cat. I need a cat. I need to get a cat. I didn't challenge my judgment or how factual the existence of mice in a house this old would be. I could smell the mice, their nests, their filth, their spawns. And if there is something I rarely get in life, it's olfactory illumination, also called phantom smells. I didn't dare tell any of my family members about the nightmare because I had been told many, many times that moving out of the city was not for everyone. I didn't want to worry my mom. She tried to persuade me to move in with her, inviting me to stay more than once, offering me homemade food, and promising me peace and clean laundry. I spent the night the best I could, turning from one side to the other, trying to get comfortable and used to every noise. I woke up the morning after with a horrible headache when I moved the curtains in the bedroom to let the sunlight in. I saw at least 30 flies, scattered, sunbathing, flapping their wings against one of the windows, and I jumped back to my bed in disgust. I had my phone fully charged and used one of my favorite methods to discover if my mind was playing games or not. I took a picture of the flies. You see, when you have schizophrenia, if you take a picture or make a video at the precise moment that you see the craziest things, you can actually check on your phone if what you are seeing is real. The mind evolved to be tricky and a vile traitor sometimes. Still, it didn't evolve as much as not to be tricked by a cell phone camera. So the hallucination you are having, if it's just a mere creation of the mind, will not appear either in the video or in a picture. The flies were there, way too many for a house that had its windows closed for the past few weeks. There was a family there before. I don't think this was normal, even for a country house. It wasn't even summer. The weather didn't look inviting for flies, and my house was not a warm place for them to live happily in. I opened the 4 curtains individually to reveal the flies blackening each window. I sprayed them and saw them fall one by one. I vacuumed the remains and moved to the bathroom for a relaxing bath. Relaxing was something that I wouldn't do for a while. I opened the faucet, and the bubbling sound of dry pipes came first, letting a little string of water fall that looked horribly yellow. By the time my bathtub was full, all I had was pea-colored water that smelled like sulfur, and it made me lose the last drop of hope I had that morning. I walked downstairs to the basement. I had been in a basement twice in my life, and one of those times was when I had to check the new house with the realtor a few weeks before moving. I wouldn't say I liked basements, the swamp smell, The spiders. The spider webs that were abandoned. Meaning the spiders are now somewhere else where we can't see them. The mice, their horrible smell, and the furnace, the root of significant nightmares that come from old stories and many, many horror movies that I wish I hadn't seen. I took a gun with me. I know I shouldn't have had one, but my dad, who didn't know better, advised me to take his gun since being alone in a house can be challenging for a woman. My nearest neighbor was 2 miles away, but so was a police station, so I thought it was an okay idea. This time, I had to use it. It was loaded and ready to shoot some cans outside in case my days turned more boring. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard noises coming from the water well. Something was struggling to get out. The well was a little bit deep, but still, anyone my size could have gotten out of there. I thought, well, great. Now I will have to shut a wild animal, because there is no way I will let an upset possum or rabid raccoon roam my basement. I cautiously approached the water well. The noise grew louder and more frantic. My heart pounded in my chest as I gripped my gun tightly, ready to defend myself. With each step closer, the sounds became clearer, and I could hear muffled cries for help. I peered into the darkness, straining my eyes to make sense of shapes. And then, as if emerging from my nightmares, there she was, tied, her clothes torn and covered in filth, her hair tangled, wounded on every inch of her body, her mouth shut, her hands firmly fastened. Her teary eyes called for help, but all I could do was just shoot. I pressed the trigger 1 time, 2, and even 3 times, with my eyes shut and my teeth grinding as hard as I could as she lay there, motionless and calm. I took my phone out of my pocket and did what I should have done before shooting. I took a picture and put myself in the frame, too. The dead body in the background, the dirty well, and me hoping none of it was real. Hoping I wasn't real. I took a picture, and there we were. The flash blinded my eyes, and I saw myself, a newborn killer, staring at the screen. She was still there. Oh, so still. Oh, there were too many flies for an empty house. And without wanting it, I finished someone else's dirty job. Plight at the museum. The car's tires skidded over the rain-wet road, squealing in the night. Edward Reiki gritted his teeth. He didn't like driving this fast, but the situation called for it. This had been the first night after changing the museum's exhibits. His first actual decision on the job. At midnight, he'd gotten a call. The motion sensor alarms had detected someone inside the building. Someone had broken in. What a disaster. He gripped the steering wheel in a white-knuckle grip and fought to keep control of his 2-ton beast. Bernhelm Museum's windows glinted in his headlights like a cat's eyes in the dark. No lights were on. The place lay in shadow. The multi-story building sat still. The alarm's bleat rose over the roar of the rain and the car's rumble. Seeing the place with black eyes whilst the alarm squealed made Edward's stomach shrivel. He wished he had someone else with him now. He had goosebumps. Hell, he'd even take the previous curator, Stanley Graham's. Stanley had lost a few of his marbles as he'd aged. He'd covered the museum walls with paintings of cute puppies and kittens. Puppies and kittens only had a place in a museum if they were the early pets of cave people. Stanley had also left him a note. Dear Edward, there is something you should know about the Bernhelm Museum. You see, there is life in the pain. Stanley had not managed to write beyond that. The word ended in a ragged scratch as the pen flew off the page. The heart attack had ended Stanley's capacity to use words, breathe, or pump blood. Edward assumed the guy was trying to tell him something about getting old, but he'd been unable to figure it out yet. It might not even mean anything. The man was a few sandwiches shy of a picnic. Edward killed the engine and dashed through the rain to the museum's open mouth. He held the collar of his jacket over his head as he ran to try to keep the torrent at bay. Edward tested the front door. It didn't budge. Whoever it was, they had not broken in through here or through any of the front windows. Edward fished the key out of his pocket, shivering as his shoes filled with water, and opened the door. Inside, the rain quieted down to a steady hiss. The alarm's bleat was much louder in here. A potent, earthy smell permeated the air. Edward rumpled his nose and raised his hands to his ears. Where was the damn thing? He knew it was around here somewhere. He fumbled in the dark, slapping the fob of his keys against the wall. This task was so much easier in daylight. At last, he found the alarm box, and some magic from the fob silenced the screech. He sighed, his ears thanking him for ending their torment. The darkened halls of the museum waited for him in silence. A low rumble of thunder vibrated through the floor beneath his feet for a very long time. A resounding thump, like that of a gun, echoed down the corridors. The blood turned to ice in his veins. Yes, there was somebody else here with him. Here, in his home, away from home, inside his dream. How dare they? It hurt his soul. When he was a boy, his grandfather had taken him to a natural history museum. The cave dwellers and their early tools had ignited wonder. The fossils and dinosaur bones had cast a magic. The Tyrannosaurus, Rex, mammoths, and megalodons had inspired terror and admiration. Edward wanted only to share the same awe he'd felt the first time. It was an honorable goal. There was an obvious way to achieve this. He had to be the best museum curator ever. But one thing had stood in his way, at least until now. He always started afresh. He came in, did away with the old, and swept in with the new. Edward couldn't stand to leave something standing that wasn't his. It didn't matter whether it worked. He discarded functional systems and inadequate systems. Unfortunately, such an attitude did not make him many friends. And so, he'd bounced around from museum to museum, never quite reaching the desired position. But now, he was Burnhelm Museum's curator. He'd realized his lifelong ambition. At last, after so much struggle, and now this? Youngsters and drug-addled maniacs breaking in, with their spray paints and their broken bottles of beer and their, good God, used condoms. This place was his, and he wasn't about to hand it over to some hooligans or street urchins pulling a prank. Edward scowled and closed the door behind him and locked it. He hit the lights and called out to the intruders. "It's too late to escape," he said. "The police are already on their way." A lie. "You never should have come here." A high-pitched coughing sound bounced around the building. It came from many places at once, back and forth. Edward's eyes widened. There were many criminals in here, and they were laughing at him. Shaking, he clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms, and marched into the museum. It took him longer than it should have to notice what was wrong with his exhibits. The paintings were empty. Jaw hanging down to his chest, Edward stumbled to a halt. He squinted at a painting that had, until tonight, held a picture of a T-Rex roaring before a Cretaceous backdrop. His fury fell away to dumbfoundedness. He tried to articulate his confusion, but all that came out was, Next to him, flies were buzzing about something brown. It was about 2 feet long and approximately 6 inches in diameter. Excrement. Edward blinked. It wasn't unheard of for vagrants to soil the places they entered with their waste. But no human on the planet could produce this much. Had these lunatics squished their leavings together to fool him into thinking that the deep rumble vibrated through the earth once more? Edward jumped and squealed and spun around. Nothing was behind him. His heart hammered, high up in his chest. It seemed to lodge at the base of his throat, making breathing hard. If he didn't get his pulse under control, he'd end up the same way as Stanley Graham's, dead of a heart attack. Some distant part of Edward's mind was piecing bits together. Little by little, you see, there is life in the pain. Had he meant to write, "There is life in the paintings"? Was that why he'd covered the walls with pictures of cute baby animals? So that, when they came to life, something was moving at the periphery of his vision on both sides. At last, Edward understood. It's not always a good idea to change everything and start afresh when you take over someone else's role. They might have had a good reason for doing the things they did. You should at least acquaint yourself with the position before scrapping their work. But it was a bit late now. Yet, for one split second before his agonizing death, he felt once more that awe he'd experienced as a child. And then the raptors had him. Dance of the Damned. The dimly lit bar exuded an aura of faded elegance, the soft glow of neon lights casting a surreal ambiance over the audience, who sat in hushed anticipation. As the spotlight flickered to life, illuminating the makeshift stage at one end of the room, the murmurs of conversation died down, replaced by an air of eager expectation. As the curtains slowly parted, revealing the expanse of the stage, a solitary figure stood poised at its center, the ballerina, with a grace that seemed to transcend the earthly realm. The ballerina came to life as the first notes of the music filled the air. Her movements were a symphony of fluidity and precision, each step a testament to years of tireless dedication and unwavering discipline. Like a delicate flower swaying in the breeze, she floated across the stage, her every motion a masterpiece. Her arms moved languidly, weaving a tale of love and longing with each sweep and arc. She beckoned the audience into her world with each movement, inviting them to share her emotions. Poised and elegant, the ballerina commanded the stage with a commanding and serene presence. Her posture was flawless, her form a study in perfect alignment. She seemed to defy gravity, soaring effortlessly through the air with divine grace. Her footwork was a marvel to behold, each step executed with exquisite precision and grace. From the delicate steps to the lightning-fast turns, her movements were a testament to the strength and agility of the human body. The audience watched in awe as she leaped and twirled across the stage, her every movement a testament to the power of the human spirit. But beyond the technical prowess, the ballerina's ability to convey emotion captivated the audience. With each extension of her leg and each arch of her back, she imbued her performance with a depth of feeling that resonated with all who watched. From the depths of despair to the heights of ecstasy, her dance spoke to the universal human experience, transcending language and culture. The ballerina executed a series of mesmerizing turns that left the audience breathless. Spinning gracefully across the stage, she seemed to defy the laws of physics, her movements a blur of motion and light. But as the music swelled to its crescendo and the time for her final bow arrived, a sudden sense of unease settled over the bar. With a flourish, the ballerina prepared to take her bow, her movements graceful and poised. But then disaster struck in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Inexplicably, she stumbled, her perfect balance faltering as she fell to the ground in a heap. Gasps of shock echoed through the bar as the audience watched in horror. But it was what happened next that genuinely chilled them to the bone. As the ballerina lay on the stage, everything around her seemed to shift and blur, as if reality was unraveling. The once vibrant colors of the stage faded to a dull, lifeless gray, and a sickening sense of dread hung heavy in the air. And then, from her wrists and ankles, blood began to flow, staining the stage crimson red. It pooled around her, a macabre tableau of horror and despair. With a sudden jerk, the ballerina rose to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural. It was as if she were a marionette manipulated by unseen hands, her body moving in grotesque contortions that defied all logic and reason. The audience watched in stunned silence as the once graceful ballerina twisted and convulsed, her limbs bending at impossible angles. And then, with a horrifying realization, they understood what was happening. She was no longer in control of her own body. With each agonizing movement, it became clear that she was under control by some evil force, a dark presence that lurked unseen in the shadows. As she danced her final, nightmarish dance, the audience could only watch her twisted performance in helpless horror. They knew they were witnessing something more sinister than a dance. They saw the manifestation of pure, unadulterated evil, a force beyond comprehension that had seized control of the ballerina's soul. As the ballerina rose from the stage floor, her once graceful movements became grotesque spasms of pain and fear. With each jerky motion, her bones fractured and splintered, and the sickening sound of snapping echoed through the bar like a macabre symphony. Her limbs twisted at unnatural angles, each movement a torment of agony that etched lines of suffering onto her pale, sweat-drenched face. Her eyes, wide with terror, pleaded for release. Still, her mouth was closed by wire that had inexplicably wrapped around her lips, sealing them shut with cruel finality. Blood dripped from the small holes punctured by the wire, staining her pristine costume with crimson droplets. With each convulsion, her skin ripped, revealing raw, red flesh beneath. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the sickening stench of decay, a suffocating fog that enveloped the stage in a shroud of horror. The audience watched in horrified fascination as the ballerina's body contorted and twisted, her movements growing more frantic and erratic with each passing moment. It was as if she looked torn apart from the inside out, her very essence consumed by the dark forces that held her in their grasp. The once pristine costume began to tear and shred with each jerky movement. Fabric rent apart like paper, exposing swaths of pale, sweat-sickened skin beneath. The delicate tutu, once a symbol of elegance and grace, now hung in tatters around her hips, the shredded remnants barely clinging to her broken form. With each agonizing twist and contortion, more of her flesh lay bare to the horrified audience. The delicate lace and satin that had once adorned her body now lay in tatters on the stage floor, a grotesque parody of the beauty that had once been. And as the last shreds of fabric fell away, the ballerina stood naked and exposed before the stunned onlookers. Her body, once a vision of perfection, was now marred by bruises and welts, the result of the unspeakable torture she had endured. The audience, pinned to their chairs by a mixture of terror and morbid fascination, could only watch in horror as the ballerina's broken form was laid bare before them. There was nowhere to look and hide from the gruesome spectacle unfolding on stage. Everyone was dressed like ballerinas and knew they would dance on that stage. They wanted to run, but couldn't move, as an invisible force controlled them. As the ballerina's tortured dance finally came to an end, the audience was left to grapple with the horrifying images that had seared into their minds, a grim testament to the depths of depravity that lurked within the shadows of the human soul. And then, with a final, gut-wrenching spasm, she collapsed to the ground in a heap of broken bones and shredded flesh. Her once beautiful form stood reduced to nothing more than a grotesque pile of meat and bone, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked beneath the surface of reality. A palpable tension hung in the air, suffocating the bar in an oppressive silence. The audience, gripped by horror and fascination, could not tear their eyes away from the grotesque spectacle unfolding before them. Everything disappeared into darkness, leaving only screams. The darkness seemed to last forever. Suddenly, as the final notes of the haunting melody faded into the darkness, the stage erupted into blinding light, illuminating a scene of unspeakable horror. Standing at the center of the stage was another woman, clad in a tattered ballerina costume. Yet, any semblance of grace or beauty was shattered by the sight of the twisted iron-spiked wire that bound her limbs, cutting into her flesh with every movement. Where her eyes should have been, there were only bloody craters oozing with the sickening evidence of unspeakable violence. Her mouth, too, was sealed shut with glue, denying her even the semblance of a voice to cry out in pain. With a start, the woman began to dance, her movements jerky and erratic as she struggled against the cruel restraints that bound her. Blood spilled onto the stage with each tortured step, staining the pristine floorboards with a sickening crimson hue. As the grotesque spectacle unfolded on stage, 10 figures sat in silence, their faces hidden behind intricate designs of porcelain and feathers, giving them an air of anonymity and intrigue. Dressed uniformly in black suits and dresses, the men and women held glasses filled with a dark crimson liquid, which remained a mystery to those around them. With each sickening snap of bone, they raised their glasses in a silent toast, the red liquid sloshing gently within. Their reactions were chillingly composed, their expressions hidden behind the masks as they watched the ballerina's torment unfold with a sense of detached amusement. To them, the grotesque display was not a source of horror, but a form of entertainment, a dreadful performance to be savored and enjoyed. And so, as the final horrific act played out on stage, and the ballerina's lifeless form lay crumpled on the ground, the figures rose from their seats in unison, their masks giving nothing away as they started to laugh. What lies beneath? Summer 1972. Road trip! Pam screamed over the sound of the jukebox. She had shoved her chair aside, since there was no dance floor in this hole-in-wall bar. Her arms in the air, hips bumping and grinding to the beat, feet barely moving. After half a pitcher, she could sway her hips or move her feet. She opted for swaying to Otis Redding. Wastin' time. Barb was still capable of doing a fair lip sync of sitting on the dock of the bay. Pam a tad too wasted to remember all the words, fancying themselves the last hippies, the two girls planning to leave their homes in Georgia and head for the Frisco Bay. A few weeks earlier, Barb had bought a '58 VW van, orange, of course. Whoever had owned Old Orange before had taken out the rear benches and built a sleeping platform, leaving plenty of storage underneath. About 10 days into the trip, by the time they came to Houston, they realized that the air hose, a vital necessity to cool the engine, would not stay where it was supposed to be. So, taking the southern route through the desert was out of the question. So, they turned right toward Dallas. Old Orange had a few other minor quirks. For instance, the radio only worked in third and fourth gear. The windshield wipers only went one way. After each swipe, whoever was in the passenger seat needed to pound on the windshield to dislodge the wiper. Orange's top speed was 50 miles per hour if the wind was at their back. a little faster if going downhill. The starter had left them in New Orleans, which showed remarkable good taste for a starter, and made Pam the designated pusher. In Dallas, they learned the expensive lesson that transmissions require fluids. They spent a week in a tiny village at Lake Superior Shore, where the main entertainment was going to the dump and watching the bears feed. Pointing west again, the plan was to bypass Denver and go to Aspen. Orange was willing but unable to keep the minimum speed of 40 km/h while climbing up I-70. Once again, a detour was needed. They headed north into Wyoming before turning west again. 2 days later, they left Jackson Hole after breakfast and entered the Grand Tetons with its raw, relatively young peaks. Mid-morning, they pulled in at a rest stop next to a small lake. It was mid-June. The north slope had been warmed by the sun for several weeks and was carpeted with wildflowers, every color in the rainbow, and all the ones in between. The south side was still holding on to patches of snow. This contrast on either side of the still water, reflecting the blue sky, was breathtaking. While Barb was coaxing enough life from the Coleman stove to heat water, Pam stretched her legs. Avoiding the clumps of snow and sludge, she made her way up the south hill. Feeling a rumble in the ground, she was stunned at the sight. When she looked over the top of the hill, animals, moose, elk, deer, rabbits, skunks, buffalo, the odd wolf, all running eastward. Pam was a city girl, but even she thought this was strange. None of the animals paid any attention to her or each other. They ran, stampeded across the meadow as fast as their legs would move. Worried, she returned to the van. Barb listened and shrugged. "It's nothing," she said. "If there was a fire, they would have closed the park. Let's have our coffee and go on." Pam wasn't so sure, but took her word for it. Soon they drove on, admiring the breathtaking majesty that are the Tetons. By early afternoon, they entered the Visitors Center of Yellowstone Park. Right on time, which meant too late to get front row seats. Or rather, front row standing spots to watch the show. While the summer intern was giving a play-by-play, Old Faithful did its thing. "Well, folks, thank you for coming. If you want to see it again, please come back in." Old Faithful spewed again. "Wow," the kid gushed. "That's a first." And again, another plume of sulfuric steam erupted. The intern stood staring, mouth open. Everybody felt the rumble. Some may have been more alarmed than others, but they all felt it. Old Faithful was quiet for a few minutes. People dared to exhale in relief. Pam just wanted to grab Barb and run, but she didn't. She stayed with the other tourists and stared, and then another spurt. No, that's not the right word. A geyser, a flume. Oh, hell. let's just call it what it was. An eruption. The hot, sulfuric steam bubbled up and erupted, overstepping its recognized boundaries, and sprayed over the poor, hapless tourists who were standing on the eastern boardwalk. This time, Pam dragged her friend away. Barb jumped in the driver's seat, while Pam, since that was her job, pushed the old relic off. As soon as Barb was able to turn the engine over, Pam ran and jumped in the passenger seat. People were screaming, running, elbowing, pushing and stumbling over each other. Some looked like extras in a horror movie. Faces burned, clothing melting to their skin. Only this was real. She didn't want to watch, didn't want to see. But it's like a massive pile-up. You just have to. Pam gasped when she saw the head. Just think of the slobbering, angry head. The poster child of the Jurassic Park movies. The face only a mother could love. That's what reared up out of the boiling water. It had had eons to incubate and mature. And that day, it was ready to claim its heritage. If they'd taken the time, they might have wondered how many of those creatures had laid their eggs in the warm springs of Yellowstone. How many eggs had survived the long winter that followed the meteor impact? The one that extinguished this one's mommy and daddy. They didn't have to ask or wonder, because just as Barb was able to back up without running over anyone, another one crawled out. This one had wings, and within minutes took flight, fully grown. Or at least, hopefully, it was full grown. If this was just a baby, it could gown up to be much bigger than a jumbo jet. Much, much bigger. The lake, that famous tourist attraction, that placid aqua blue, edged in yellow circle, was now a churning cauldron with prehistoric critters peeking out before clambering ashore, screeching, howling, and knocking over, crushing anything in their paths. Go, please go, Pam begged. I can't, Barb cried. I want to, but I can't make myself drive over anyone. If you don't, they will. Pam pointed to the creatures that were crawling out of the water. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Barb summed up the situation, though they knew it was time to haul ass. And even then, it might be too late. They sat there in the deceptive safety of Old Orange and stared as one grotesque beast after another crawled out of the boiling water. Go, Pam whimpered. Go, please, go, Barb. She nudged, shook, punched, did what she could to make Barb wake up. Go, she screamed, with a curse and a shudder. Barb put her foot on the gas and jumped forward. Don't stall, don't stall, don't stall. Pam prayed as she turned backward in her seat and watched the first tree burst spontaneously into flames. Faster, Barb, faster. Barb was a good driver. That day, she turned into an excellent demolition derby driver. Aggressively, she drove around everybody, forced people into ditches and off the side of the mountain. She prayed, the act of contrition. "O my Lord God, I am heartily sorry for offending thee." All the way into Idaho, they had grumbled the day before, when the gas station in Jack and Hole had gouged them, when the pump claimed to have put 12 gallons into a half-full 10-gallon tank, then charged them the usury price of 42 cents per gallon for the privilege. But at least they had a full tank, and they were going downhill, which in the little old van was a plus, a great plus. Maybe those flying creatures were colorblind and couldn't see orange because cars left and right, front and back of them were picked up and dribbled like basketballs, rolled like marbles, stepped on like empty beer cans. But Barb weaved and bobbed and evaded their games. It didn't take long, just a few millennia, to make it to Shoshone ice caves, where they huddled with hundreds of other refugees till the National Guard came to tell them that it was safe to leave the cave. Pam and Barb never made it to San Francisco. Old Orange threw a rod the next day, a belly full of apples. Well, explain to me what it was doing on the tree if I wasn't meant to eat it. I had a long, hard day, Adam. If you remember correctly, you were supposed to name all the animals with tails, while I handled the green ones. The next thing I know, you're passed out by the water circle, taking yet another one of your naps. That left me to come up with all those names, and by the time I was done, I was famished. The apple tree is the closest to the water hole, and that's why I picked an apple. It was convenient. I wasn't deliberately trying to disobey the Lord. After an exhausting day, I simply wanted whichever fruit I could get to first. Can you explain to me why God put the forbidden fruit so close to us and made it so red to draw our attention to it, and made it so tasty? Adam, if you could try an apple, you would never be the same. I cannot describe its delectability. You may as well try one now. We've already been cast out. It's not as though he's going to cast us out again. If you ask me, it's unbelievably rude of him to have us name every living creature on earth, put all the acceptable fruit out of reach, and then kick us out of the garden once all the tedious tasks are completed. He didn't even say thank you, not even a card expressing his thanks. I realize cards haven't been invented yet, but if he can create an entire universe in a few days, I think he can figure out a way to show gratitude. Don't you? Oh, stop crying, Adam. This place isn't so bad. Sure, it isn't paradise, but there are some plants with needles sticking out of them, and some lovely dust, and a lot of very interesting rocks. That one looks sharp. Be sure to never pick it up and drop it on anybody's head. Please cover yourself up. I don't know why, but for some reason, I can't stand the sight of you and all your nakedness. Shame. What's that? No. You know I don't listen when he talks. It's so loud and condescending. Do this, do that. Name this, worship me. Stop rolling your eyes at me, Eve, or I'll turn you back into a rib. It's all so boring. If any of it were all that vital to know, he'd write it down on a piece of stone. I suggested that to him once, and he pretended it was a bad recommendation. But secretly, I think he filed it away to use at a later date. The first time I see a rock with a rule on it, I'm going to look up at the sky and say, "Wow, who gave you that idea?" See if I don't. I'm not afraid of him, you know. You might be, but I'm not. I've barely had time to contemplate my own existence, so the threat of having my existence nullified is of no concern to me. Clearly, he doesn't want to get rid of us and start from scratch, or he would have done it already. No, he wants to teach us a lesson. He wants us to wander aimlessly for the remainder of our lives, cloaked in this thing called shame. I shall not. I refuse. I have nothing to be ashamed of, and I will not pretend that I do. A man makes a silly rule, and if the rule is broken, that does not make it any less silly. I don't care what sort of man it is. I don't care if you say God is not simply a man. He sounds like a man. And because he can sound any way he likes, that means he wants to sound like a man. We call him he, don't we? Then he is a man with made-up rules for living that I was never going to obey. I don't care if he hears me. Let him hear me. I am meant to spend the rest of my days surrounded by needle plants and you, a man with one rib. I am meant to wear rags because not wearing them makes me feel strange. I am meant to have children, I suppose, based on how disagreeable I am and how stupid you are. I can't imagine they'll be very endearing children. Once those children are here, I have no idea who they'll have children with, because it'll just be us. I guess that means once we die and our children die, that'll be the end of this nonsensical little experiment. Oh, but at least we named the giraffes first. A question for you, Adam, since he isn't responding to us. Why are we the only ones who can't eat the apples? I specifically saw a loud bird eating an apple the other day. Why weren't all the loud birds cast out of the garden? If a giraffe eats an apple, will it be thrown out of the garden? Why were we the only ones prohibited? Right, the knowledge. We're not meant to know anything. We're just meant to assign names, be fruitful, multiply, and praise him every chance we get. If we want knowledge, then it's out we go. Well, Adam, I choose to know. I choose to know things. Not just some things, but everything. Why create an entire world and then tell me I'm not allowed to know anything about it? I can't help but feel this was all some kind of test, and I will not be tested. Had I known that he was testing me, I would have eaten every apple on that tree. I would have stared up at him with the seeds falling out of my mouth, and I would have laughed. For if I am to go into exile, I am not going with an empty stomach. I will go with a belly full of apples. My only regret is that I stopped at one. I will not feel badly about you being punished for something I did either, because I have been punished many times over for you. For your laziness, for your superiority complex, for the way you smell at night when you are pressed up against me. It reeks so that I can barely sleep. Yet I have said nothing, because I have accepted that we are joined forever. You make strange noises in your sleep, but he never punished you for that. I took one bite, and we are damned. Be angry if you like, Adam, but do not expect me to worry myself over your anger. Your anger is your business. I will not make it mine. Last night, before he woke us with our punishment, I had a dream. I had a dream that all of this was submerged in water. Enough water to cover even the tops of the tallest trees. There were more people, lots more. They were running and screaming. Some were already drowned. In the distance, I could see a large boat, but it was too far away. I would never reach it in time. I would die alongside all these strangers. Instead, I lay myself down. I began to float, right up to the surface. I could still hear the wailing and the pleading all around me, but I was not making a sound. I simply laid like that on the surface of the water and let it take me wherever it wanted to go. The manuscript of Kashi. There are places where the veil between the known and the unfathomable is perilously thin, and it is in such realms that truths are best left forgotten. Ancient Kashi, now Varanasi, conceals more than history in its name. With dusk settling, the city wraps itself in a twilight shroud. Smoke threads twist through the air, blending with murmured prayers, thickening the atmosphere with an almost tangible sense of mystery. The Ganges River reflects the glimmering lights of ceremonial fires along the Ghats, where the sacred and the profane dance in the curling mists. The pyres, fed by ancient woods, consume the bodies with a reverence that belies the violence of flames. The air is thick with sandalwood and charred offerings, masking the finality of death under sacred rites. In the shallows of the Ganges, silhouetted figures wade with deliberate steps. These men, draped in the sparse cloth of the destitute, are seekers of the dead's forgotten wealth. Their hands, darkened by river silt and ash, sift through the submerged sands, feeling for the cold bite of metal. Gold rings, necklaces, and the occasional coin dropped from the deceased's pockets, each piece plucked from the holy river's grip, is a macabre token of survival, destined to be cleansed, melted down, and sold to adorn the living. Stepping off a narrow boat onto the stone steps, James Montgomery, a British archaeologist, felt as though he had entered a painting, a scene preserved across the ages. Even with his academic accolades, James clung to his skepticism like a knight to his armor, guarding against the intangible. He believed only in what could be touched, measured, seen. Yet Varanasi seemed determined to erode his certainties. His constant companion, a weathered copy of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, betrayed a fascination with the afterlife, a scholarly interest, he insisted, nothing more. His trained eyes sketched and noted details as he walked through the bustling streets. It was early spring of 1932, and the British Raj held sway over India. Political tensions were palpable, with the struggle for independence intensifying across many regions like a storm gathering on the horizon. He had spent years poring over texts and artifacts in the dusty confines of the British Museum. This opportunity for fieldwork was a rare departure from his usual scholarly pursuits, and he was determined to make the most of it, fluent in Sanskrit and well-versed in Hindu and Sikh philosophy and religion. He was chosen for an excavation project at the revered Kashi Vishwanath Temple, one of the 12 Jyotirlingas, the holiest Shiva temples. The task was to study and document newly unearthed relics that had recently been discovered beneath the temple grounds. James had heard rumors of an ancient sanctuary that once stood where the Kashi Vishwanath Temple now dominated. Scholars had long debated its origins, speculating that it might have been dedicated to Vishnu and built during a time when the city was a flourishing center of Vaishnavite worship. This prospect excited him not only for its historical significance, but also for the professional acclaim that such a discovery would bring. James adjusted his satchel and stepped toward the temple, his eyes scanning the intricate carvings with a critical eye. Agoras, an ascetic sect known for extreme Hinduism, roamed the temple grounds. Ignoring the incense and chants, he focused on the worn stone steps, tracing the passage of countless feet over centuries. His fingers brushed against the ancient stone, lingering longer than necessary. His distrust, a fortress against the unknown, was built brick by brick from his strictly rational upbringing. His father, a staunch scientist, had always dismissed anything that couldn't be quantified or measured. Yet, the allure of the mystical and the unexplainable had always gnawed at the edges of James's curiosity. Weeks passed as James meticulously cataloged statues, pottery fragments, and other relics brought up by the excavation team. He spent his days under the relentless sun and his evenings in quiet reflection, poring over his notes and comparing them with historical texts. The heat, the dust, and the ceaseless hum of the city created a backdrop of sensory overload, grounding him in the present even as he delved into the past. The distant sounds of political rallies and protests occasionally broke the monotony, reminding him of the larger currents of change sweeping the nation. One afternoon, Pandit Sharma, the temple's priest and scholar, approached James with a bundle wrapped in cloth. Earlier, workers had found it deep within the temple's sanctum, and now, silhouetted against the glaring sun, he carried it with a solemn grace. "What have you there, Pandit Sharma?" James asked, dusting his hands off as he stood. The pandit paused. "This manuscript was among the items uncovered today, Sahib. The workers thought it prudent to bring it directly to me." James raised an eyebrow. "May I?" he asked, reaching out. Pandit Sharma hesitated for a moment before handing it over. "Of course, Mr. Montgomery." It was a weathered leather manuscript. The cover was adorned with unusual mandalas and arcane symbols. Intrigued, James carefully opened the manuscript. His eyes widened slightly. These symbols, they could date back to the time of the Gupta Empire, or even earlier. Is that possible? "Very likely, Sahib," the pandit replied, his voice measured. "That part of the temple has not been disturbed in centuries." James traced a finger over the inscriptions. These inscriptions, they're unlike anything we've found so far. Quite remarkable how much light this could shed on our understanding of the past. Pandit Sharma nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, it sheds light on forgotten chapters, but even a small light can cast long shadows." James paused, considering the pandit's words, then smiled slightly. "I am not merely here to unearth the past, Pandit Sharma. I aim to awaken it." Pandit Sharma met his gaze, a hint of understanding in his eyes. "Be mindful, Sahib. Awakened pasts can have lives of their own." James's smile grew. "Precisely, Pandit." He then glanced up, a touch of condescension in his voice. "You're done here. Thanks." With a slight nod, Pandit Sharma turned and walked away, leaving James alone with the manuscript. As James deciphered the text, his breath caught. The manuscript chronicled his life with chilling precision, like a mirror reflecting his deepest secrets. Determined to uncover the manuscript's origins, James carefully closed the ancient pages and clutched it to his chest. He approached one of the workers from the excavation team, asking about the manuscript's origins. They confirmed it had been unearthed from a chamber beneath the temple, near an older sanctuary, possibly dedicated to Vishnu, the preserver of time and destiny. James couldn't believe his luck. This find suggested a time when Vaishnavism thrived in Varanasi, possibly before Shaivism took prominence. Archaeologists had searched for this temple for decades, and here it was, right under his feet. His professional hubris soared. He would be the one to unveil its mysteries. The excavation sparked heated debates among local authorities and religious figures. Many saw it as exploitative and desecrating sacred sites. Workers labored under brutal conditions, some collapsing from exhaustion, a few already dead. Precious relics were bound for Britain, trophies of conquest rather than cultural treasures. James saw how the British Raj thrived on deepening religious divides to maintain control. That night, he took the manuscript with him, its weight heavy in his bag. Stepping out of the temple, a sensation of being watched washed over him. He glanced around, but saw only the sleepy sun and the twinkle of distant torches. As James moved towards the exit, a nearly naked figure, covered in ashes, stepped into his path. The Aghori's unblinking eyes bored into his, like twin voids absorbing all light. Without a word, he briefly extended his hand, touching James's chest before drawing back. "The past is not a place you can escape," he murmured, his voice a low rasp. He then stepped aside, allowing James to continue. Other Aghoris stood like statues in the shade, their eyes fixed on him. He could feel their silent stares following him as he made his way home under the weak light of a lone bulb. James hunched over the ancient manuscript spread across the makeshift desk in his rented room near the Ghats. Night had fallen over Varanasi, a cloak of silence occasionally pierced by the distant clamor of street vendors closing shop. His eyes traced the faded Sanskrit inscribed on parchment. The air around him felt unnaturally still, as if the darkness outside was staring at him. As he read further, the words exposed his deepest fears of inadequacy and the recent failure of his marriage. It described the sudden illness and death of his childhood friend, an event that had haunted him for years. It recounted the tragic accident that claimed his sister, down to the exact date and circumstances. The text also revealed his deepest aspirations to return to Britain as a celebrated scholar, juxtaposed with a chilling prediction that he would never leave India. The manuscript spoke of a future where his work would remain unfinished, his dreams unfulfilled. It knew his private regrets, the letters he wrote but never sent, and his secret fears of dying alone in a foreign land. One evening, a passage caught his eye, a prophecy marking a specific date, ominously close. It predicted a fire that would engulf the Manikarnika Ghat, where the bodies of the dead are cremated in ceaseless pyres. It detailed an ominous ritual involving a sacrifice, ashes, and flames. The description was hauntingly visceral. A growing sense of paranoia marked the days that followed. James noticed figures draped in white ashes, with stark red markings across their foreheads, appearing frequently in his windows and following him around town. They spoke no words, but watched him with an intensity that left his skin crawling. One morning, he found a small clay statue of Shiva outside his door, its eyes painted a vivid red that seemed to follow him into his dreams. The Aghoris seemed less like mere devotees and more like heralds of impending doom. They left offerings that were both a blessing and a warning. Fragrant bundles of herbs used in ancient death rituals, cryptic notes penned in an almost forgotten script, hinting at the inevitable turn of the cosmic wheel. As the festival of Mahashivaratri, the great night of Shiva, approached, bringing crowds of pilgrims to the city, James decided it was time to leave India immediately. He hastily packed his belongings and made plans to buy a ticket for the next ship back to Britain. He rushed back to the temple to gather his materials and return the manuscript, hoping to distance himself from the dark predictions. He walked through crowds of devotees lost in their reverent prayers. Behind him, the procession of silent Aghoris maintained their vigil. Beyond mere observers, they seemed to usher him toward a destiny he had yet to comprehend. Pushing open the chamber's heavy stone door, the manuscript in his bag felt like a living heart beating in sync with his own. A heart that felt, with dreadful certainty, the true nature of the cycle it was bound to. He sensed the followers just beyond the doorway, their silent presence pressing in on him. The musty smell of the ancient parchment mingled with the faint scent of incense. He gently put down the manuscript, but the intricate symbols and diagrams evoked an overwhelming familiarity. The memory of his mentor, Dr. Robert Astor, came unbidden. Astor's voice, rich with reverence, speaking of the Akashic records, that boundless archive of all that ever was and will be. Dr. Astor had described it as an energetic log of all existence, recorded in a non-physical plane known as the ether. James had always dismissed these notions as esoteric ramblings. But now, in the manuscript's presence, he felt a dawning realization that perhaps his mentor had been right all along. James had always viewed the teachings of the Upanishads as academic. Yet the manuscript's unsettling synchronicities brought them to life, defying his scholarly detachment. He had searched for logical explanations, but each attempt only deepened his unease. The weight of inevitability grew, pressing down on him like an unseen force. It was as if the manuscript tapped into something profound and ancient, recording the fate of humanity with chilling precision. It felt as if the manuscript was a conduit to the Akashic records themselves, linking him to an endless archive of existence. Brahman, the ultimate reality, no longer seemed a distant metaphysical idea, but a palpable truth closing in on him. He felt an inexplicable compulsion to venture deeper into the sanctum. The air grew denser, charged with an energy that made the hairs on his neck stand. Intricate mandalas adorned the walls, their interlocking patterns subtly swirling, almost alive, drawing him further in. The sense of an unseen force grew more intense, a nearly tangible presence pressing in from all sides. Then, at the heart of the sanctum, James encountered the Timeless One. The entity had no definitive form, appearing as a floating mandala, a geometric figure of shifting forms and glowing light that seemed to be everywhere all at once. An irresistible pull gripped him, his feet moving of their own accord, drawing him into the heart of the mandala. Stepping into it, James found himself in the vast library of the Akashic records, where every event, thought, and possibility was cataloged in endless corridors of knowledge. Shelves stretched beyond sight, each filled with tomes of every life that had ever been and ever would be. He walked through the library, his fingers brushing against ancient scrolls. Each revealed a different path he could have taken, yet all led back to the mandala's center. Every choice, every action had led him here. James encountered visions of his life as he drifted through the Akashic records. Moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and failure. He saw himself as a child, staring wide-eyed at the night sky, dreaming of its mysteries. He saw his younger self, full of ambition and determination, seeking to unravel the secrets of the past. And he saw his present self, standing at the threshold of cosmic enlightenment, poised to transcend the limits of human understanding. The realization struck him with profound clarity. The illusion of Maya unraveled before his eyes. James's lingering self, a fragile residue of his identity, resisted the truth. He saw himself standing at the edge of the void, the vast expanse of the Akashic records stretching before him. With a final, desperate act of surrender, he let go, allowing himself to fall into the mandala's center. The geometric patterns converged into a blinding point of light. And in that light, the true nature of the universe was revealed to James. The boundaries of his being faded away, replaced by the infinite expanse of the cosmic order. Enlightenment and terror walked hand in hand through his psyche as he became one with the eternal truths that had tormented him. Stepping out of the shining temple, naked and transformed, Agoras waited outside, eyes filled with reverence. Their chants, a deep hum of Om Namah Shivaya rose and fell like the tide. They approached, hands gentle but firm, painting his body with ashes in a sacred and surreal ritual. The manuscript's revelations had stripped him of his former self, exposing him to the timeless one. Shadows blinked under the torchlight, twisting into hideous forms. The Aghoris' chants swelled, their voices merging into an ominous crescendo. The night pulsed with otherworldly energy. The streets, the river, the city itself seemed to writhe with their own life. The Aghoris approached, their hands moving with ritualistic precision, smearing his skin with ashes. The chants grew louder, each note a harbinger of the horrors hidden within that ancient manuscript. The smell of burnt offerings clinging to the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the river. With eyes dark and impenetrable, the Aghoris lifted him onto a makeshift bier. Their chants rose as they carried him through the narrow streets, the fire casting long shadows on ancient walls. The city watched in silence, as if holding its breath. The procession reached the Ghats, where pyres crackled with an insatiable hunger. They laid him on the pyre, the wood rough against his skin. The flames licked at his skin like a searing pan. The Aghoris surrounded him, their chants reaching a fevered pitch. He raised his arms and covered his eyes. The words of Krishna to Arjuna rose from the depths of his memory, carried by a voice that felt both his own and not. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the Mighty One, he intoned, the words slicing through the night. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. The Aghoris bowed, their chants rising to an otherworldly intensity, a tangible force pressing in from all sides. The inferno flared higher, casting grotesque silhouettes that danced and twisted in macabre patterns. As the pyre ignited, some Aghoris stepped into the fire, their chants unwavering. One by one, their bodies were consumed in a final, fiery ritual. Others shared his roasted flesh in an act of utmost devotion. The night filled with the scent of burning flesh and sandalwood. The flames consumed him, the chants fading into a distant hum. The Ghats of Varanasi glowed with an ethereal light, the river reflecting the divine dance. The night embraced him, the pyre's ashes mingling with the sacred waters, a tight-lipped witness to the eternal cycle